So this is week 2 of our Ninalika Sock Knit Along. So by now you should be at the stage where you have cast on your toe, done your first part of the colour work, and then knit all of the foot to the heel. And so this section is now going to be the mini gusset increases, it's going to be the shadow wrap heel, and then mini gusset decreases as well. And what it makes is a fabulous heel. It's very similar to the Fish Lips Kiss heel, if you've used that one before, the FLK. But this one, having the mini gusset as well, gives a really good fit, or at least for me it does. I much prefer this, adding this mini gusset. It gives a lot more room. Great if you've got a high instep. The technique's not too difficult at all. It's a little bit fiddly in places, but if you have learnt the TSK and the TSP, so that's the twin stitch knit and the twin stitch purl, and then also the triple stitch knit and the triple stitch purl, then it's fairly straightforward. Very clever, it's like magic. You need to keep your needles tight in certain places. But yeah, so that's the next stage. So I'm going to show you how I've done it using my DPNs. So the first part of the pattern tells us that we need to knit along needle 1. So for my DPNs, that will be my first 2 needles that I need to knit along. So I'm just going to knit along my first 2 needles. Okay, so I've knit along my first 2 needles, which the pattern refers to as N1, needle 1, and now what the pattern refers to as N2, needle 2, is my needle 3 and 4 for DPNs. And the first part of it is that I need to make one right. And so obviously that's going to be the very first stitch on my 3rd needle. So I'm just going to pick up, it makes it much easier because I'm just literally going to pick up that stitch there and put it on my needle. And then I'm going to knit into the front of it. And obviously we've done all of these for the toe, so make one right, knit to the end of the round. Now here, because I knit with 4 DPNs and the 5th is my knitting needle, I'm actually going to take it down to 3 DPNs because this is the heel that's going to be knit on. So I'm going to take away this needle here, and I'm just going to carry on so that I end up with 3 needles. And on this needle, whoops, it asks us to make one left at the end of the round. So almost at the end of the round. So again, it's at the end of the needle when you're using DPNs, and it's going to be picking up that bar there. And then I'm going to be putting it on my needle. Oops, need to put it in the other way. So there we go. And then knitting through the back of it. And that's my make one left. So if you carry on repeating what the pattern says until we get to the shadow wrap heel. Okay, so I've just finished the mini gusset increases, and you can see those here. You can see that it's just starting to fan out with these increases. And so now I'm moving on to the shadow wrap heel. Now don't forget, in the files section is the picture link to the video to do the shadow wrap heel, and also there's a link to do the twin stitch knit and the twin stitch purl, and also it's got the triple stitch knit and the triple stitch purl. So for the first part of the shadow wrap heel, it asks us to knit needle 1, so that's my needle 1 and needle 2 of my DPNs. And then on needle 3, which is needle 2 of the pattern, a bit confusing, just untangle my yarn. It says to knit, so for me I'm doing the smaller size, so to knit to 6 stitches before the end of the round. So almost there. like the never-ending row when you're filming. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's the last one. Okay, and then it says twin stitch, knit and turn. So from the twin stitch, I'm sure you've all watched the videos, but I'm just going to be picking up this drop down bar here from this stitch and putting it on my needle. Now I always pull that stitch back so there's a bit of a gap, and then I'm putting my needle into that stitch, knitting it while still holding on to this one, and then putting it back onto the left hand needle. And then you see there you've got the loop that's been created and the first stitch and the one I've just knitted, so it makes 2 stitches in that one area. And then I'm just going to push that needle up so it doesn't slip off, and then turn, make sure I pull it tight. So that is everything that you'll do for needle 1, so needle 1 and 2 of your DPNs, and you don't go back to those then until you finish the shadow wrap heel. So it's just going to be working on this needle 3, which is needle 2 on the written pattern. Obviously if you're not using DPNs, then it'll just be the other half of the needles that you're using. Okay, so for the next part it then says purl to 6 stitches before the end, and then we're going to do a twin stitch purl. So I'm pulling tight, and then I'm just going to purl to 6 stitches before the end. Okay, and then purl, so I'm almost at 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so for this 6th stitch I'm going to move the purl stitch from the left needle over to my right, and then I'm going to pick up this bar here with my left needle, and then I'm sort of holding on to this stitch here with this finger, and I'm going to purl into the bar I've just picked up, and I'm always holding on to that stitch, and that creates 2 stitches in that purl, which you can see there. And I'm just going to put my needle into those 2 stitches and move it back over to my left needle and just pull it tight, and then turn. We're going to knit back across, so all the way back to one before the twin stitch knit that we did. Just push that needle forward a bit. If ever you get confused as to where you're at, just remember that it was the left hand side with the knit that you worked on first. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you've got your double twin stitch knit there, and you'll have the same on this side. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you've got your double purl here. So I know that my next one will be this side, because I've got to put, because this was done first. So once I've got 2 of these, then I know I've got to do the purl back. Sometimes you can get a bit confused about that. So 1 stitch before the twin stitch knit, which is here, and then I'm just going to do exactly the same. Pick up the bar, put it on my needle whilst I'm holding this one out of the way, knit into it, and then put that on the needle. Oops. And then I've got my 2 stitches there, so I've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that aren't going to be knitted on, and then I've got my 2 twin stitch knits. And then as the pattern says, you're then going to just turn the needles around and then purl back to 1 stitch. Whoops, put my needle in, keep it tight. Purl back to 1 stitch before the twin stitch purl that we did. Almost there. Okay, so there's my twin stitch purl. Bring it a bit closer so you can see. twin stitch purl and the one stitch before. So I'm going to move that one stitch over to my right needle, and then I'm going to pick up the bar, hold on to this one, purl into that stitch, and then put both of those back on to the left needle, and there's my 2 twin stitch purls. So I've got my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then my 2 twin stitch purls, and then I'm just going to turn. And so you can see here now I've got my 5 stitches here with my 2 twin stitch knits. I've got my stitches in the middle, and then here I've got my 5 stitches here and my 2 twin stitch purls. We just continue that now. So you're repeating rounds 1 and 2, which is what we've just done, until, for me, there's I've got to do it 9 times until there are 9 twin stitch knits here and 9 twin stitch purls here, and then in the middle of mine I'll have 10 stitches, and then for the medium size 12 and the large size 12. And so I personally don't count the rounds, I just count the stitches, and it just means I'm not having to record lots of things. So I'm going to get on and do that, and then I'll be back. Okay, so that's the first part of the shadow wrap heel done for me. So you can see on my needle, let's pull that back there, I've got the 5 stitches here on the left, then I have all my twin stitch knits, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then I have my 10 stitches in the middle, or 12 if you're doing the medium and large size, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then on my right needle I have my 5 stitches here, and then I have my 9 twin stitch purls, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so we're now on to, so we've done half of the heel now, and now we're on to the second part of the heel. And so with your, so you don't forget the positioning, so you've got your yarn on your right needle with your twin stitch purls, and you're going to be starting on the knit side, and you're going to knit to your twin stitch knit. So okay, and then the next is to knit your first twin stitch here. So knit this one, so you're going to put your needle through both loops as if it's one stitch, and then knit it, and that remains on your right needle. And then you're going to do the triple stitch. So all you're going to do is exactly the same as the twin stitch, so pretend that there's only the one stitch here. You're just going to pick up that one bar again, and you're going to put it onto your needle whilst holding on to those 2 from the stitch, and then you're going to knit into that bar, and then place that stitch that you've knitted back onto the left hand needle, and you'll see there you now have the 3 stitches in the one area as opposed to the 2 stitches here. So that's your twin stitch knit, and this is your triple stitch knit. Okay, and then you're just going to turn, and then once you've turned you're going to do the same but for purl. So you're going to purl across the needle until you get to your first twin stitch purl. Okay, almost there. And then you're going to treat this as if it was one stitch again, so you're going to purl into both of those stitches as if it was one stitch, and then you're going to do a triple stitch purl here. So you're going to, like before, you're going to put the needle in and take those 2 stitches over to your right hand needle, and you're going to pick up that bar that's below, holding on to these 2 stitches here with my finger, and I'm going to purl into that bar, and then it gives me 3 stitches here. You can see that very clearly. 1, 2 and 3, and I'm just going to put my needle into those 3 stitches at the back and move them over to my left hand needle, and now you can see I've got my twin stitch purl here and my triple stitch purl there, and then I'm just going to turn. So that was the first 2 rows, and then the next row, so the 3rd row, is you're going to knit to that triple stitch. So excuse the shaking, that's my dog, Bumpy. Okay, so knit to the triple stitch. Now, with this, you might see there's a little bit of a gap. Let's see that to focus. So you've got the 3 stitches here. Don't think that this, sometimes you can get confused and think that that's 1 stitch and that's your triple stitch. It's not. If you look, the bar there is holding all 3 of those stitches. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to treat this triple stitch as 1 stitch, like you did with the twin stitch prior. So you're going to put your needle into all 3 stitches as if it was 1 stitch, and you're going to knit those as 1 stitch, and then you're going to do a triple stitch in this next one. So you've got your twin stitch here, and you're going to pick that bar up, put it on the needle, knit into it, and put that back on your left needle, and that becomes your next triple stitch, and you've got your others there, and then you're going to turn your work, and you're going to do the exact same thing again. So you're going to purl all the way across to your triple purl stitch, I always think these heels are like magic. They just sort of appear and there's no picking up, which is wonderful. Okay, so that's my last stitch before the triple, and you can see there's the 3 stitches on my needle. So I'm going to purl those 3, and then I'm going to take the next twin stitch over onto my right needle, and I'm going to pick up the bar, holding those 2 twin stitches there. I'm going to purl into that bar, and then I've now got 3 stitches here that I'm moving over onto my left needle, and then I'm turning. And so you repeat those 2 rows, so that's knitting across to your triple stitch, knit the triple stitch, and then create another triple stitch, and then turn, and then do the purls back, purl into the triple stitch, and then purl the next twin stitch to make it a triple purl stitch, and then turn. So you can repeat rows 3 and 4 until there's only 1 triple. So you'll do the last triple stitch on each. So I'll come back for the last row to show you the last row. Okay, so I'm on the last 2 rounds of this heel. So this is round 3, so I'm going to knit until I get to my triple stitch. Almost there. Oops. Okay, so knitting my triple stitch, creating the last triple knit stitch, so that will be the last one on the left hand side for the knitting, turning and then purling to my triple stitch purl. Okay, almost there. Right, so I'm going to purl my triple stitch purl and do the last one, so putting them over, lifting up the bar, purling it and putting them back onto my right hand needle, left hand needle, and then pulling them tight. So I have got the 5 stitches, 1 triple stitch knit, then I've got 26 stitches in the middle, and then my triple stitch purl, and then the 5 stitches. So to finish this shadow wrap heel, you then have to, because it says we're now going to start working in the rounds again. So the next round is knit to the end of the round. So I'm just going to knit to the end of the round. Okay, coming to that last triple stitch. And so I'm going to knit that last triple stitch and carry on knitting those 5 that we haven't touched for a while. And that takes me to the end of that round. I've got my 1 triple stitch purl that's still left on the needle at the moment. You then will work that when you start mini gusset decreases. So you can see we've now got the heel, so we've got the increased gussets here, then we've got the heel section, which is like magic. And so now what we're going to do is do the decreases, and now we're back working in the round. So what I'll do is I'll actually put this heel back onto 2 needles, so I'll just divide them again, and then move on to the mini gusset decreases. So I think for the setup round you're going to need 2 stitch markers, so I'll get my stitch markers and then I'll be back. Okay, so for the setup round of the mini gusset decreases, you have to knit the first needle. So that's my needle 1 and needle 2 because I'm using DPNs. So I've just knit across those 2 needles to bring me to the heel. And then it asks me to knit 6 or 7 if you're doing the large size. So I'm going to knit 6. I'm going to pull this quite tight as well so I don't get any gaps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6th stitch should be that triple stitch purl that you're going to knit into now. So knit that as 1 stitch, and that's my 6 stitches. Make sure you pull it tight. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it asks me to place a marker, and then it says knit to the end of the round, but knit to 6 stitches before the end of the round. So I'm actually going to put these onto 2 needles, so I know there's 26 stitches in the middle, so I'm just going to knit to 13. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's just so that I can put my DPNs back onto 4 needles. So I'm going to knit the rest of those 26 stitches that are in the middle, so another 13. Okay, so I've then got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on my left needle, and it asks me to place a marker and knit to the end of the round. So that's the setup round ready to do the mini gusset decreases. So all you did there was you knit the first half, which is the front of the foot, and then you knit the 6 stitches. So the 6th stitch was your triple stitch purl that you knitted as 1 stitch across the middle, and then let's just zoom out a little bit, across the middle, and then placed another stitch marker with 6 stitches at the end. So you've got your 2 stitch markers on the heel. Okay, and so the next round is we knit the first needle, or my first 2 needles, that's across the top of the foot, so I'll just do that quickly. And it says knit to 2 stitches before the marker. So let's just calm down a bit. Okay, so 2 stitches before the marker. And it says to do knit 2 together. And then it says to slip the marker, knit to the next marker, and then I have to slip the marker, and then it asks me to SSK. So slip, slip, knit, and then knit to the end of the round. And then the next round is knit all the way around. Complete that part of the mini gusset decreases. Once you've completed the decrease for the gusset, you'll end up then with your heel, and you'll have your little V section for your increase and decrease on the gusset. And that's where we're at for this week. So it's the toes, the colour work, and the foot from the first part, and then this part was the increase gusset, the shadow wrap heel, and the decrease gusset. And it's a little bit of magic, I think. It's great, I love it. And so the next part will be the leg, and the leg is just the stockinette stitch for as many rounds as you want the length of your sock to be, and then working on the colour chart. So I'll come back again when I get to the colour chart on the leg to show you that part. Happy knitting!